This is the Lean Builders Hoots on the Ground podcast with absolutely, positively no bullshito. Join us as we dig into exactly what lean construction is and how we can use these concepts and strategies in the field. This podcast will be different as we journey to job sites and mine the minds of lean builders, all in effort to pass forward building knowledge from those who have put their time in to learn a better way. Because that's just what lean builders do. What's up, y'all? Adam Hoots here, the Lean Builder Podcast, Hoots on the Ground with another special edition, R&D with Hoots, Key, and sometimes Harry. We're going to get him on here. Keyan, super excited to have you back. I know we're going to look at this book today. Look familiar?
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Jason Schroeder, Elevating Superintendents, and we're going to talk about one of the principles. What's on your mind today, Keyan?
Just a reminder, everybody, I was telling Adam about 6 months ago, in our industry, you can look smart just by picking up a book, reading some principles and concepts and trying to figure out how to apply it. And so he told me, yeah, they call that R&D. And I said, R&D, research and development? He said, no, rip and deploy. And I just love that term. I think of every time I try to get an idea and try to make it help what I do is ripping and deploying. And I'll just put this premise out there. I swear, when you walk your job site, man, there's piles of cash everywhere. The bar is so low in our industry. It's like a buffet of process improvement opportunity. And I promise you, you don't have to be that smart. I'm not. You just know, you got to know how to R&D and you got to read a little bit. And we're going to share some things about how we R&D and empower you guys to do the same. And hopefully you can skip a step and R&D off of what we're R&Ding off of.
Absolutely. And shout out Harry Schmidt for coining that term, although I believe he R&D'd it from the healthcare world, as he said in our podcast before. So who knows who came up with it, but I do know it's important and it's going to empower our industry to take things from other industries and just improve upon them. So yes, I super appreciate that reminder of where this segment has come from and developed. And I'm excited to dive in today because this is one that's super close and personal to me.
Sure. We're both fans of Elevating Construction Superintendents. I love books like this because you know how you read a book and it's like you read chapter 1 and then chapter 2 is basically restating chapter 1 and chapter 3 is just a saying. And by the end, you get through the whole book and they could have done the whole thing in one chapter. I promise you, this is not one of those kind of books. If you haven't read it, there's over 50 principles, maybe more, at least 50 principles that Jason goes through. And I swear each one of them is just like a nugget to R&D from. But what we wanted to talk about today was principle number 3, to-do lists and personal organization. It's page 57 and 58 of the book. And I wrote a blog on the Lean Builder blog around this topic after reading this book, because I just feel like time management, managing your schedule, managing your to-dos, things like that is just so important in our industry. And no one really teaches that. That's not something when you're coming in and you're learning how to do constructability review and procurement and financials and all these different things. No one's teaching you about good time management skills. And I wanted to highlight some thoughts around this and some other books as we dive into this.
Yeah, I think that's the answer to a lot of the working 55, 60, 70 hours a week. If we're better able to manage within our time that has been allotted during the workday, we're able to work shorter days and still provide the same or more impact. I think that's huge.
That's it. So I'm going to share my screen here and we'll get started. Big picture, like you said, as I was coming up and I was teaching others under me, you can't just come in Monday morning and start checking email. You really have to have a plan for your week. You got to have a plan of what you're going to try to accomplish, what things are more important than others, how long those activities or tasks that you have to do are going to take, and build in time in your calendar to make sure you can do those things. You got to build in time to go do those personal things. If you've got a doctor's appointment, you need to pick up your kids, all those kind of things. That should be planned out well in advance. So that way you're not just spinning and spinning. And so many of us are. And what I try to encourage everybody is Friday afternoon before you leave, early Monday before you even start looking at an email, plan your week. in addition to planning your week, you got to have a good note-taking process. It's another pet peeve of mine. If I see anybody walk into a meeting without a notebook and a pen, do you realize how many commitments each person makes per day? You're just going to remember it all. I know some folks got better memories in their younger age, but you got to take notes. You got to have good notes. You got to track those to-dos so that way you don't lose track of that. And so in this chapter, the to-do list and personal organization, we're going to touch on some of that and some ideas that I have around it.
That's awesome. Having a plan is everything. We do it for our work. Why would we not do it for our personal lives? I hear you diving into this. Some people call it work-life balance. There's some terms I don't like. That is one of them. I think it's a life balance situation. I very much appreciate and value the fact that you're talking about getting just one list, right? This is one list that includes all of your personal things. In fact, those personal things should probably be scheduled first, because without handling those, the remainder of your life can be in disarray. As a leader of a company, being able to see that and understand that is very important. And for you to be empowered to actually make that happen is everything. That's what I'm taking away from where you're going there. But we all have to-do lists. So how is this any different than?
Yeah, I guess that'd be a great place to start. Probably like eight years ago or so, I noticed that, and myself included, a lot of us carry those pocket cards. And
Crap and
yeah,
crap is what
buddy's
Buddy
crap
called it.
and crap list.
Yeah.
That's right. And it's the oh crap list, or oh, I got to get this done, or whatever. One of the things that years ago I came up with here was basically it's like a bullet journal for superintendents. And so it was one thing that would have all your notes in it, everything that you would need to do. And so for a time, especially for some of our folks that are like a more analog approach than a digital approach, it had each day broken out. It had the daily tracker of the things that you have to do every day. Our superintendents got to do a lot every day. They got to do their daily report. They got to take photos. They got to walk the job. They got to do their safety huddles. They got to update their HAZCOM sheets. There's so much to do each day.
Listen to the PM. Where are the T&M tickets? Where are the blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I'm with you.
That's it. Then you got the meetings, and then there's weekly to-dos, right? You got your weekly reports. You got updating your lean boards, all those kind of things. And one way to do this is really just having a notebook, or using tools like Trello or some other Todoist or some of these other tools that exist to just track your to-dos so you don't get lost and you don't forget about things. So important.
Yeah, in fact, Jen Lacey sent me a handful of Robbins and Morton cards. I'm sure she got you some of those as well, where it was something very similar, but it was just a little pocket card with some bullet points on it and things that were like, hey, these are my leader standard work, if you will.
Yeah, for sure. The second thing is, you got to take it up a level. And to reference another book for R&D, there's an author named Brian Tracy. He's got a bunch of great books out there. The one I want to talk about is a book called Eat That Frog. And in that book, it comes from a Mark Twain saying, where Mark Twain's got a saying where it's, if you eat a live frog for breakfast every morning, most likely that's the worst thing that's going to happen to you that day. Okay. And so the premise is, the point is like, tackle your really hard stuff first. Don't procrastinate on it. Eat the frog every morning. First thing, go after that one to do, that one issue that's big and hairy and nasty that needs to be done. That'll have some consequences if it's not done. Get that stuff done. Don't focus on all the other little to-dos that don't have any consequence. And so in that book, he's got something called the ABCDE method, and I'll do my best to summarize. When you make your to-do list, your A's are things that will have immediate consequence if they're not done. So for those of us maybe on a project management side, you don't get your billing turned in on time, trades aren't going to get paid, there's going to be immediate consequence for that. You don't get your concrete pour by that Friday, like you're going to be behind schedule. Like that submittal doesn't get turned in, you're behind schedule. And so those kind of things are like, those are A priorities. B priorities are things that could have consequences. So they're important. They're not as important as A's, but over time, they could become A's pretty quick. C's are things that don't have any consequence at all. So I don't know, let's say a trade on a different trade that you used to work with asks you to lunch, right? You want to go to lunch, you put it on your to-do list, you put it on your calendar, but ultimately, if you don't go to that lunch, there's probably not a consequence for it. You'll just reschedule it. So you shouldn't be doing C's well above A's or B's. D's are things you need to be delegating. Those are things that you shouldn't be doing. It's good to keep track of those things on your list to make sure they get done, but they're not things you should be doing. And then E's are things that you should eliminate altogether. So they're things that you should delegate properly, let somebody have ownership over, and then not think about because that it's being managed properly. And so I think that's the next level as you build into your to-do list is prioritizing A through E.
Yeah, I hear you referring to that Eisenhower Matrix. We did that podcast back in the day. I think that's really what there it is. Yeah, I'm feeling that. I guess the A's are those fires, right? Those things that, hey, they're important and urgent and need to be done now.
Yes.
The B's are maybe it's not so important or urgent, but it is important.
Yeah.
And then the C's kind of fit in that not urgent but important as well, or can maybe dangle into the delegation. And then the D's and E's, the quadrant fours that you see right here on the screen, where you're just going to delegate it or rid yourself of that waste.
Yeah, you got it, Adam. And what I've noticed from younger staff, new to the business, is that they're not quite sure what's urgent. They'll decide on what's urgent depending on the ranking of the person that tells them to do something. And then when it comes to importance, they're not great at that either. And especially when it comes to time. So when I think of importance, it's a time commitment too. If you got to get the billing out and it's going to take you 6 hours to do, you got to make sure you block that time and you give yourself that time. And this matrix is just a really good way to have younger staff as they're learning what's urgent, what's not, what's important, what's not. And I misspoke. Urgency is time, and then importance is obviously importance, but it's just so important that you're teaching that to younger staff so that they can be as effective and know what's an A and what's a B.
One of the things I often challenge teams that I coach with is, especially with younger folks who are new and are taking orders by who has a senior superintendent or who has senior in front of their name, is you can actually visualize this on a whiteboard and you can say, hey, here's my quadrants. Like, these are all the things I think I'm doing that are important and urgent. And if you want to add something else up there, what are we going to take away? That is such a mentality that it doesn't exist well in construction. And this is a great way to be able to visualize your work, to understand where are you working most of the time. And if you find yourself in 3 or 4 working, doing these tasks, it might be time to reevaluate to see how you can focus on that quadrant 2 specifically.
That's absolutely right. And I always say, we'll say this, if your days are always filled up with urgent and important, you're firefighting. You are not planning your work. And the goal is to get out of quadrant. You can't be in quadrant one the whole project. You just can't.
Unfortunately, I think a lot of our teams do exist there. And you want to talk about those mental health issues and things that really exist in our business. That's a result of operating in that quadrant 1.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And so now, as we're thinking through this, you're coming into your work week, you're thinking about all your to-dos, you're organizing all your to-dos either in this ABCDE method, or you're also looking at the Eisenhower Matrix, really making sure that you understand which ones are going to take you a lot of time to complete and how urgent these are and when they should be due. The really next step to take it to the next level is to start time blocking. And this is a calendar of one of our superintendents, Lucas Wilkie. Him and his project manager, Caddy, they've gotten really good at time blocking. I do it every morning on my calendar. And I think the way Jason says it in the book and the way that I've always done it is I will come in, and it's good. If you got personal stuff that you got to take care of, you need to leave early one day to go catch a ball game, you need to make it to that doctor's appointment, whatever it is, you better get that on your vacation. Get that on your calendar, block that out, and it's up to you at that point if you're going to let somebody schedule over it or not. If you're constantly in reactive mode and you don't have those things blocked out, you're just going to let everything get you covered up. And then the last thing I'll say is that the color coding is extremely helpful. Standardizing the work to maybe there's a certain portion of each day you do things. So if your brain is fresher in the morning, man, get in there and time block to do your financial stuff in the morning. if you get if you're dull in the morning, but you really start kicking into high gear at 3, 4 o'clock, do those activities that you're going to be the best version of yourself in that time box, so to speak. And it's really a game changer.
You got to be intentional about your schedule, about your priorities. If you want to maximize the value that you can create in a day, you need to be intentional with your time. You need to time block it, as we're looking at here, but also time boxing, you just mentioned, is so important. That as an industry, we are very good at planning, right? We do a lot of planning. And I think what we're saying here is the same concept as you're going to go plan your week for your project the week or 2 weeks beforehand. You need to be doing that with your personal week and your to-do activities and everything that you're doing. And then when Monday morning comes, and after you've got that plan for the week, go grab your stopwatch and say, how long is this RFI going to take me? Ready? Go. And start researching the drawing. And so now you're starting to talk about time boxing, because we only have here, you've got 3 hours for to create the client proposal. If you go 4 hours, the rest of your day could be in trouble. And so it's very important to operate within our limits here.
If you don't believe me, here's an example you could do for efficiency, especially when it comes to multitasking. Okay. So the way it's a game, the way it works is you get 3 pens, different colors, and you're going to have 3 columns. The first column is going to be 1 through 10. The second column will be all capitals, A through J. Third column, all lowercase, A through J. And I want you to time yourself, pick up the red pen or whatever color pen, write the number 1, put it down, pick up the next pen, write the capital A, put it down, pick up the next pen, write the lowercase a, put it down, and do that all the way until you get through. And time it. Then the second version of the exercise is you pick up the first pen and you write 1 through 10, put it down. Second, capital A through J, put it down. Third, lowercase A through J, put it down, and time it. And you will see that when you block out and focus on the one thing at a time, you will go so much faster. And so it's the same principle with how you manage your calendar.
I've actually got that same exercise on context switching, right? That's what we're really trying to drive home, is staying focused on that one piece flow.
Love it. Ultimately, to wrap this up, everybody in our industry has to have a good time management to do tracking process. And I promise you, if you can plan your work, strategize around what the effort's going to take from a time commitment to do the work, organize the urgency level of the work, it's just going to let you have a lot more time back in your day to focus on a higher quality of work and to be thinking ahead.
Yeah, in fact, there's a YouTube video out there, and in Jason Schroeder's book, he references how you're filling up a jar, right? The jar is like your maximum time for the day. And if you want to fill it up with the rocks first, which are your family or your personal items, and then you want to put the gravel in, right? Mm-hmm. Because the gravel is going to be those leader standard works. I'm going to read that book, or I'm going to do this thing that's going to elevate me. And then you want to put in the sand, which is that stuff that you have to do, my daily role, RFI submittals, meeting minutes. And then you can start putting in some of the water, some of the things that, but if you put things in a reverse order, it doesn't all fit. And that's what we're saying. So maybe we'll include the YouTube video with some of the show notes. I think that's really powerful to watch that happen.
And then just from a sake of vulnerability, as we're going through these concepts, I don't want to make it seem like we're preaching. I promise you, I've put the water in the jar over and over again. I have not prioritized the right things over and over again. I have not managed my time over and over. This is a journey. That's what's beautiful about lean. It's what's beautiful about continuous improvement. We're sharing these concepts, but we are also on our equal journey, constantly tinkering and tweaking and trying to figure out what would work best.
The only way we've learned any of these is because we've failed at all of them. And so experiential learning is the best learning opportunity. And I'll be the first one to tell you how much I failed. So I appreciate you pointing that out, Keyan. We are not on soapboxes. We are not, and honestly, not all the times do we practice what we preach.
Heck no. Absolutely.
But we do know it's the right way to do things.
Yeah. And it's helped a lot. I promise you this will help you a lot.
Yep.
Helped me every day.
Perfect. What else do we want to get in there on this one?
I think that's it, Adam, man. As always, keep crushing it. Love what you're doing, man.
Heck yeah. Always a lot of fun R&Ding with Hoots and Key. Let's go.
Let's go.